10 senior UFC stars were defeated by newcomers. UFC is all about thrill, terror, and the most unexpected happenings, which makes the sport one of the most anticipated ones. Every sport has veterans, be it either we look at football, basketball, or fighting, and these veterans have earned their names due to their immense record of impressive statistics, and it wouldn't be uncommon for you to expect your favorite veteran to never lose. While it may sound logical in other sports, it's certainly not the case in UFC. Because imagine watching your all-time favorite veteran lose to a newcomer who has just signed up for the sport. Sounds crazy, right? But trust me, UFC is filled with such examples. Welcome back everyone to a brand new video. In this video, we'll be looking at 10 senior UFC stars who were defeated by newcomers. But before moving ahead, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell icon. Let's begin. Number 10, Anderson Silva vs Israel Adesanya, UFC 234. It all dates back to UFC 234 when the great Anderson Silva was bound to face the rookie Israel Adesanya, which seemed to be a great moment for Anderson Silva to prove himself, yet once again considering he had been out of the octagon for years after his last solid win. Silva's last win was upon a controversial decision, and hence his much-needed opportunity was here. However, this match unfortunately followed in the footsteps of a movie storyline when things took a dramatic turn within the match. There were high hopes of Silva securing an easy win. Nevertheless, what the world didn't know was that Adesanya had different plans as he went on to wipe out the old-timer in all 3 rounds, and secured an easy win. This did sound shocking, but let me clarify one thing. This is just the number 10. Keep watching to explore more thrill. Number 9, Frankie Edgar vs Corey Sandhagen, Fight Night 184. It is not common for us to see the seniors dropping down a weight class to give themselves a boost because come on, why would you just go up? But no, Frankie Edgar wanted to do it, and he did it to take on the newcomer Corey Sandhagen. The former featherweight champion Frankie Edgar, who was turning 39 years old, decided to do the unexpected, as he believed it would help him recover from his previous losses against Brian Ortega, Matt Holloway, and Korean Zombie. Nonetheless, on the contrary, this just gave Corey Sandhagen a golden opportunity to prove himself. Like imagine winning your initial games in a new division from a guy like Edgar. Wouldn't that be amazing? Well, both the fighters having their own motives for the fight came face to face at Fight Night 184, and that's when things concluded abruptly. 29 seconds into the game, it was clear that Sandhagen had beaten the world out of Edgar, and this was a dramatic setback for Edgar. Number 8, Heath Herring vs Brock Lesnar, UFC 87. Before entering the UFC, Brock Lesnar already had a big name, as he had many accomplishments under his belt, but to gain credibility in the UFC, he needed to secure some wins. His debut was fierce as he was uncontrollable in his first match, and then the UFC needed to find a more convenient opponent for the Beast to get his credibility up to the mark. And that's when Heath Herring came into the story. With many solid statistics and wins under his belt, it was evident that if Lesnar would take down this guy, he would get the much needed credibility. And no wonder that with 5 takedowns in 11.5 minutes, Rocky Brock was able to secure an easy win. Number 7, Elvis Senosik vs Michael Bisping, UFC 70. The UK's battles have always been immense with sheer thrill and all of the dramatic turns that would have the audience off their benches. Years back in 2007, a then young and inexperienced Michael Bisping was set to take on a great match against the more experienced Elvis Senosik. What seemed to be a rather tough competition for Bisping turned out to be his evergreen career bout, as he was competing in Senosik in his home of Manchester in front of a great audience. He was even featured in the promotional flyer of the UFC event, and as the match started, things unfolded differently, and Bisping prevailed by scoring a second-round TKO. Number 6, Dominic Cruz vs Marlon Vera, UFC on ESPN 41. The 37-year-old Dominic Cruz, a fighter turned commentator, returned to the octagon to refresh some memories when he decided to take on Henry Cejudo. Dominic's return took place after years of disconnections from the octagon due to some injuries. After a series of events, Marlon Vera, 29 years old, with 19 wins under his belt, came face-to-face with Dominic Cruz, 37 years old with nearly half the wins. What seemed to be a tough competition ended up with a rookie Vera gracing an easy win against Cruz, after brutally torturing Cruz in the octagon. This was probably the first time Marlon Vera was seen such furiously and one-sidedly securing a win, which surely acts as a stepping stone in his career, and this showdown allowed him to reap all the more credibility. Number 5, Dennis Siver vs Conor McGregor, Fight Night 59. With an exceptional start to his glittering career, Conor McGregor has had pretty convincing wins in his career as a rookie, which has skyrocketed his credibility and allowed him to contend for more greater and competitive fights. However, with some of his recent wins, McGregor was known to be moving closer and closer to a title match, given that he needed just another victory. With the UFC doing their best in making Conor a famous name, they arranged a match of Conor with the more experienced veteran Dennis Silver at Fight Night 59, while they also announced before the match that Conor's win will help him secure his title match. And as expected, Conor did what was pretty evident and brutalized Dennis Silver before TKOing him to secure a famous win. Number 4. Marvin Eastman vs. Rampage Jackson, UFC 67. Back in the day, Rampage Jackson, or to put it officially, Quinton Jackson, was not a known name or a face either. Therefore, he needed a much bigger win or a matchup to make a rather prominent introduction to the UFC, which fortunately he did later on. The UFC chose Marvin Eastman as Jackson's launchpad, although this was to some extent a rematch, with Eastman winning the first one earlier in the days of Quinton's debut. With no hopes of the result changing in any way, Marvin Eastman would to anyone seem the pick for the match. However, things ended differently when Rampage Jackson defeated the veteran Marvin Eastman. Number 3. Chris Weidman vs. Dominic Reyes, UFC on ESPN 6. Chris Weidman, a name who had a decent start to his UFC career with plenty of wins. However, following a series of wins, the poor guy suffered some injuries, due to which his connection to the UFC was lost for a year or so. However, as he returned to make another debut, he was placed in a match against none other than Dominic Reyes, who was moving undefeated in the UFC with some great wins. Although this wasn't just a fight to count as another fight in Dominic's career, it played a good role as Dominic went on to secure a good win against the returned Chris Weidman, who later fell into further complications due to further injuries. Number 2. Johnny Hendricks vs. Paulo Costa, UFC 217. Johnny Hendricks was pretty vulnerable in 2017, given how circumstances were toughening around him, as he had lost his title, taken up to heavier classes due to weight misses, and other several factors that had his life not at its very best. Things seemed as if Hendricks was all set for retirement. However, UFC set his match in a blatant way against a rookie, 26-year-old Brazilian Paulo Costa. Hendricks was taken down by Costa and then TKO'd in the most expected way to lose another game, which for the least thrashed his career. Later, Paulo Costa was able to contend for a title match. Number 1. BJ Penn vs. Yair Rodriguez, Fight Night 103. The UFC has acted weirdly countless times, and so is the case in this very story of matching up BJ Penn to a rookie. After a series of blows for Penn by losing several confrontations with many names, his career was being pushed to the edge of the ill, and just another fight loss would well tip over his career. However, BJ Penn took some time out from the UFC and returned a while after, and again suffered some losses, and that's when Dear Dana had plans of arranging Penn a matchup with a rookie to give him a chance to win. And the rookie was none other than Yair Rodriguez, who was coming off undefeated. The result was predictable, and BJ Penn was battered again after a series of 17 head kicks in the first round and lost the match eventually. The circumstances were simply suggesting a safe retirement at this point. With this, the video comes to an end. Don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell icon for more updates.